Hey, what's up creators? Today we're going to be covering an introduction to lighting inside of Unreal Engine 5. We're going to be using Lumen for this and showing you how we can get the most out of this. Now this video is aimed at beginners, so if you've never really looked into lighting or haven't touched lighting at all, or just want to take your lighting to the next level, this is going to be the video for you. With that being said, we are going to be covering the different light types that we've got available, how to achieve different looks, how to get things like God rays, how to get soft shadows, and even how to get emissive materials. Let's go ahead and jump into Unreal Engine 5 and show you exactly how we can do all of this. Just before we get started with this video, what's also good is just to reset your layout to the UE4 Classic layout so you've got the exact same layout that I have. The very first thing that I want you to do is go up to the Edit and Project settings. Inside of here, we're going to make sure all of our project settings are set up so we can get the most out of Lumen. And generally, all of these are going to be in the Rendering tab on the left-hand side. Inside of here, we're going to do a couple of things. The first thing that we're going to search for is our global illumination method. We're going to make sure this is set to Lumen. We're also going to make sure our reflection method is set to Lumen. And then, just scrolling down, we're also going to make sure for here, for our ray lighting mode, we've set this to surface cache, and we're using hardware ray tracing when available for our Lumen lighting, and down here under hardware ray tracing. Make sure those are turned on. Also, it's just a good idea to use virtual shadow maps too, as this is a really nice feature. Once we've done this, we may be prompted to restart the engine before we can dive in. With that done, we are now ready to start placing some lights into our scene, and it could not be easier. To do this, we are going to go up to our Place Actors panel in the top left-hand corner, and we're going to go over to our Lights tab. Now, for us to be able to see these best, what I want you to do is go ahead and go to File, New Level, and create an empty level which is completely black. Inside of here, what I want you to do is go to the Shapes tab and add in a cube and create ourselves a very simple floor. Then what I want you to do is go ahead and put a cube in this, just so we have something where we can see shadows and we can see lights. Now this is completely black at the moment. Let's go ahead and bring in our sun. The way we do this is by going over to the Lights tab in the top left-hand corner, and we can bring in the directional light. It's going to do exactly what it says on the tin. This directional light is our sun. I can select this and I can rotate this to imitate different sun positions. I can rotate this on any of the axes to control the time of day and exactly how this is going to look. With this directional light, I can also adjust all of the settings in the details panel on the right hand side, such as the intensity, the temperature, and also, if you want to go wild, the light color. Now, with this being said, there is a whole bunch of other settings in here, such as indirect lighting, volumetric scattering, and source angle. We are going to be covering this a little bit later. For now, what I want you to do is just make sure you've got a directional light in your scene and you're comfortable changing the temperature and the angle and really starting to imitate the sun if this is an exterior scene. What we're also going to do now that we've got our directional light is start introducing you to some of the other different types of lights on the left-hand side here. So the next type of light we're going to take a look at is our point light. This is relatively straightforward. This light is going to send light out in a omnidirectional fashion in a 360-degree radius and is going to imitate a light bulb in the real world. With this, we can select it and we can move it absolutely anywhere we want. Again, in the details panel on the right hand side, we can adjust these settings to be absolutely anything. So the settings we're going to take a look at for this are going to be things like the intensity to increase the brightness. Again, we can use the temperature to make this warmer or cooler in kelvins. And we can also change the light color if we want to go wild. Again, we have got a lot more settings here that we can take a look at, but we are going to cover those once we've gone through the basics. One other thing to note with our directional light and our point light and just about any other type of light is we're going to have a bunch of settings here called Effects World, which allows you to turn that light on and off essentially. And we also have one which tells the engine to render shadows from this light. And we can see as I press this on and off, we are going to see the effect with that. But for now, that is our point light. What I want you to do from here is to move on to the next type of light, which is our spotlight. We can drag and drop one of these into the scene to see exactly what they're going to do. This spotlight is going to send out light in a directional fashion in a spot. And we can see this with the cone that we've got coming out of this light. This is the only area where the light is going to hit. I can control this in the details panel using the variable for outer cone angle. I can make this bigger or I can make it smaller. I can also go in and adjust that brightness just like anything else. I can also adjust that light color, and I can even adjust the temperature if that's something that I want to do. Again, you're going to see that common theme with some of these settings. They're going to be exactly the same going from light to light. With our spotlight, there is one important setting that we should look at here, which is the inner cone angle and the outer cone angle. The outer cone angle is the maximum point where the light can reach. We also have the inner cone angle, which allows us to say where the light is going to be at its brightest. So you can see, if I have this be nice and wide, we don't get so much fall off. If we want this light to be a little bit smoother, we can just turn down that value, and then with that, it's going to have a much smoother look there. With that being said, let's go ahead and move on to the last type of light, which is our rect light. We can take this and drag and drop it into our scene. And this is going to give us a light with a rectangular light source. And with this, we can control it again in the details panel using the source width and source height. So let's take the source width, and you can see we can make the light wider, and we can also make this taller. And this is great if we're trying to imitate light coming through a window or a television screen or something like that. The spotlight is great for when we're trying to imitate light from a spotlight, for example, like in the ceiling or on a wall. And the point light is going to imitate light from a light bulb. So we've got some very interesting and very useful light types here. And looking at our rect light, let's take a look at some of the settings for this. We've got settings such as our source width, which is going to control the width as you know, and the height as you know. We also have our barn door angle, which is the little outside bits on this, and this is going to allow us to control how focused this light is, and we can open or close this as we need. We can also take that barn door length and make this bigger or make it smaller. And of course, just like before, we can adjust things like the temperature and the color. With that being said, the last type of light I want to show you is your skylight. This is essentially going to take light from all around you in terms of like the sky and just give everything a little bit of light and really starts to fill in the shadows. For me to be able to show you this, what I'm going to do is go to open our level for our third person map or example map that we've got. And the reason I'm doing this is because you need to make sure that you've got a sky in this. And then I'm going to delete the skylight in the world outliner in the top right, and I'm going to add in a new skylight. And you can see straight away what happens with this is it really starts to fill in those shadows as I bring it in. And in the details for this, I can go to my intensity scale and set this to something like 2 to make that be a little bit brighter. Or if I want to set this down to 0.5, you can see that skylight's a little bit dimmer, but now we get those darker shadows. Really straightforward light. It's just taking light from all around us and then beaming it into our scene. With this skylight, we can also use something which is called a HDRI, which allows us to take lighting information from an image and then project that out onto the scene. But we're not going to be covering that just yet. With that being done, what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and move on to show you how we can achieve soft shadows with our light, just to allow us to control this a little bit better. And this is a really big thing, and is going to allow you to see your lighting in a whole new world. Let's go and do that. To see this, what we're going to do is inside our level, we're going to go ahead and remove our directional light so we just have one light. What we're now going to see is just how we can start to soften those shadows. We are going to take a point light, and this applies for any other kind of light that we have. And I just want you to place it behind a cube so that we can see how we can start to get this looking soft. What I want you to do is just place it along. Now, by default, you're going to see you have some very harsh, very strong shadows here, and that might not be the look that you're going for. For us to change this, it's one easy setting. That is our source radius. We can find that in the details panel on the right hand side. If I go ahead and increase this source radius, what you're going to see start to happen is those shadows are going to get softer. And the reason for that is the bigger the object, the softer those shadows are going to be. There's a lot of lighting theory that I could go into with you, but this is just a very quick setting to get that soft shadow look that you're after. We also have our soft source radius, which is going to control how soft this is going to look, especially when it comes to our reflections. So to test this, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to get a sphere in my scene, just a very simple sphere here. And then using any kind of reflective material, I can put this on here. I'm going to give it a second to compile. You can see our reflection in this is quite harsh, that source. Let's say we want this source to be a little bit more diffuse so you don't see it so strongly and prominent in our reflections. That's where our soft source radius is going to come in. So if I increase that and decrease it, you can see the change it's making to our object there. Really straightforward, but essentially we're just diffusing that light a little bit. So use your soft source radius to diffuse the light, and then use the source radius to increase the source of the object, and with that, of course, control the softness of our shadows. We can do a lot with this. So now we know how to control the look of our light in terms of the softness of the shadows and how it's going to look in our reflections. Let's go ahead and take a look at a feature called indirect lighting, which is going to allow us to take lighting from one area, bounce it around the scene to light up everything else like it would in the real world. Okay, for us to be able to see the effect of indirect lighting, what I've done is I've just built a very small room here with an opening, which is kind of simulating what a window or a door is going to look like in terms of it simply letting light in. So all I've got here is a completely black room and one single area here. Now, what you're going to see happening is by default with Unreal Engine, we already have light hitting the floor here and then kind of bouncing off the sides here and kind of filling out that room a little bit. But it's not quite enough. Like if this was a real room, you would have a lot more lighting with this. And for us to control this, it's one really easy setting. We've got intensity, which controls how much light. And of course, with that, the amount of light that's scattering around is going to go up. But the real setting we want to be playing with here is indirect lighting intensity. If I change this from 1 to something like 20, you're going to see straight away light is going to be coming into this room and really scattering around without us really affecting what the outside is going to look like. So a more realistic value for this is going to be something like 50. Just turning that up, we can now see we've got our initial light source, and then with that, we can see just the walls and everything else are getting a lot of light and a lot of love here from this. Now, one thing you might be seeing is if you have slightly darker colored walls, you're not necessarily going to get so much indirect lighting. And the reason for that is because it actually takes the color of the surface and then bounces that around. So if I was to take my basic shape material here, and then take that base color and make it slightly darker, just like this. And then when I press apply on that, you can see that I don't get much lighting. If we set this back to completely white, press apply, and jump in here, you can see there's a lot more light bouncing going on there. So color is going to make a really big effect on this with our indirect lighting. If you want more indirect lighting, use lighter colors. Or alternatively, just adjust those settings that I introduced you to. So that is our indirect lighting. It's a really powerful feature and can be used to fill a room with lots of light, so we're not having to put lots of point lights everywhere. This is how you can achieve high quality natural lighting. What we're going to do now is we're going to take a look at how we can get materials to glow. What we're going to do now is take a look at how we can get materials to glow and actually emit light into the scene. And Lumen is going to do this dynamically. Again, let's go ahead and hop into Unreal Engine 5. So with this, we can just take about any object. I'm going to take this little cube here, and right now it's set to be blue. And if I want to make it emissive, what we're going to do is we're just going to right click and create a brand new material and call it glow blue. And then with this, I'm just going to double click on this and add a constant free vector with a blue value of 10, and then just 1 and 1 on everything else. So we've got a nice glowing blue here, and I'm going to put this into my emissive color on the material. If we have any object where we're doing material work and we want it to glow, this is how we can do it. I'm going to assign this to my cube here, and you're going to notice straight away this object is going to be emitting blue light. And if I move this, you can see the light is going to go with that. With that being said, I can adjust that RGB value for the emissive color there, so I can turn it down to something like 5, press apply. And then with this, you can see the amount of light coming from that is much, much lower. Now, one thing that I do want to say with our emissive materials is that when you get a certain distance away, we're not actually going to be able to see that light anymore, as this is a screen space effect. So with that being said, you cannot rely on emissive materials to just light your whole scene. You're meant to use them to help make your scene pop a little bit more, and just to add that kind of like natural flavor to it, in the sense that a light or a lamp would actually bring light into the scene. So the very last feature that I want to show you is how we can get volumetric lighting in our scene to create God rays. This is something which is so highly requested, and it's really easy to set up with Lumen. Let's go ahead and hop into Unreal Engine and do just that. So the first thing with our volumetric lighting is we actually need to have fog in this. To create this fog in our Place Actors panel, what we can do is we can search for exponential height fog and bring it into our scene. Also, just worth checking in the world outliner in the top right hand corner if we actually have this already. So I'm just going to search for exponential height fog. I'm going to delete what we've got there, and I'm going to bring in my new height fog. And with this, I can turn up the fog density up or down, but most importantly, I need to scroll down and enable volumetric fog. This is going to give us a little bit of fog, and we're going to be able to see it in 3D space. So with that being done, we're then going to take our fog density and set this to a value like 1. Now, we're not quite getting those God rays coming through yet. The way we can do this is really straightforward. That's where we need to go to our directional light. And inside of the directional light, we have a setting called volumetric scattering intensity. If I set this up to something like 20, you're going to start to see that we're actually getting those rays in here, which is really awesome. And if I take that directional light, and feel free to turn that fog down a little bit because that's just a little bit too high right now. So exponential height fog, fog density, I'm going to set this down to like 0.1, which is a little bit better. It's a bit too much, so maybe 0.05 or 0.01. And then with this, what I can do is I can just go back into that directional light, set that volumetric scattering to something like 100, so we can start to see those rays. But then with this directional light, I'm just going to go ahead and rotate this so it comes into our building a little bit more. So just going to select that and rotate it so we get those coming in. And now what you can see is we have got those rays there. We might have to go into this and use our sort of settings to get a little bit more of that, but I can see some of this already. Feel free to turn up that volumetric scattering intensity as high as you like. So you can see there, I've now set that up to 300, and with that, I have got those rays. And that's looking fantastic. And if I had trees or something like that, I could absolutely see those being cut out. So to test this, I'm just going to go to my props. And what I'm going to do is I have a nice little bush in here. And I'm going to take that bush, move it up to the ceiling here, give that a couple of seconds to start coming in, and then with that you can start to see we're getting those rays coming through that bush. So that's some really interesting stuff, and if we had a really nice scene, we're really going to start to see this come through. So with that being said, with your directional light, adjust that volumetric scattering intensity to control how much scattering and volumetric fog you're going to get from that light essentially. And then the other setting we're going to be taking a look at is inside of our exponential height fog, we have another really important setting. That setting is our scattering distribution. If we take this scattering distribution here and turn this up and down, you're going to see it's going to scatter in different ways. If I turn it up, we're getting a lot of light, just from looking at it like this. But if we turn it down a little bit, we're still getting the rays, but it's only more when we're looking directly at them or from the side. So just feel free to have a little play around with this. So that next setting that I wanted you to take a look at, which is going to help you out with this, is called Volumetric Fog Scattering Distribution. And as you can see here, it controls the scattering phase function, so how much incoming light scatters in various different directions. If you really want those God rays and looking really good, absolutely you should be using this function and having that all the way up. And you can adjust that to get the look that you like. With that in place, we should now have a really good foundation for our lighting inside of Unreal Engine 5. I do hope you have learned something new. If you have, be sure to let us know in the comments down below. If you have any questions about lighting or you just want to share your work that you've done with lighting, be sure to check out our Discord server and meet like-minded developers just like yourselves. If you'd like to support more high quality training just like this, be sure to check out our Patreon page and unlock exclusive perks such as early access to our videos, live mentoring, and easy to use game templates. That's it for this video though, I hope you have enjoyed it. As always, stay awesome, keep curating. Virtus, signing out.